Alex, every time we podcast, I get to this point in my day where I really don't want to do the research, and then it's like 2 hours before we start, and I'm like, I should really do this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then 5 pages later, we're done, and
Honestly.
it just boggles my mind how it.
It's one of those just like, I don't want to do it. And then you start doing it and you're like, hey, this is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, right? Today is kind of like a little makeshift Halloween episode as well.
Yeah.
It's the week. We're recording this kind of the weekend before Halloween.
Yeah. Halloween is next Thursday.
Yes. So as we do that, we kind of have some spooky scaries to talk about today, but not.
Spooky.
They're really more slimy Slitheries than spooky scaries.
Kind of like the gross side. Like people think like Halloween and horror, you get like the spooky scary, but you also get like the kind of gross, like
Yeah,
makes your skin
the
crawl.
gooey, goopy, gross
Yes.
Slitheries. But we are talking today about the subphylum Agnatha, which, okay, so we're done. We're in this big phylum now. We're done covering a phylum an episode or every 2 episodes because there's 9 phyla, and out of the 9, 8 of them are invertebrates, so we kind of like...
Yes. This is in the Kingdom Animalia.
Yes, we are in Kingdom Animalia, phyla Chordata. We are now in subphyla, which I guess would be really class, but we're not.
Well,
it's a subphyla, but the class itself is Cyclus.
Subphylum vertebrata. So it's an infraphylum, technically.
So it's like a tertiary phylum.
Yeah, so it's not as low as a class.
Because the class would be Cyclostomi that we're talking about today, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But for right now, let's get into how we always start, right? Nature in the news. Today's nature in the news is... Sorry, I'm going to adjust the camera here. Today's nature in the news comes from Science Daily. Another paleontology article, because I kind of find these and I go, this is the one, because every other article on nature.org or Science Daily is like cell research or climate change, and it's like, that's not what we're here for today. We're here for animals.
And this is pretty fresh, actually. Published yesterday, in fact.
Yeah, I didn't even read that part when I found it.
This is breaking news.
But this was, as my camera shakes when I smash my desk, this is from the University of Colorado at Boulder, so
very big university.
Big old university, especially when it comes to paleontology and the ancient histories of the animal kingdom. We are in Rangeley, Colorado, where we have found a new mammal species. Now, this is big.
Yeah.
Kind of in size, too, actually. This is about, modern standard, small. But for the time period, we're talking...
Decent. Yeah, decent for the time period. So this comes from the age of the dinosaurs, so during the Mesozoic era.
Right.
More appropriately in the later Cretaceous.
So tail end.
70 to 75 million years ago. So not quite the very end.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I messed it up. Later Cretaceous, which mammals had started evolving at that point, and they were present. But one this large, and they described it about the size of a muskrat. I mean...
Beaver, large rodent size.
Like, not quite the size of a basketball. That'd be like beaver size.
Yeah.
Like
small soccer ball.
Yeah. It's maybe like a soccer ball size, a little smaller. So still for this time period, that's a large mammal. Most of the mammals at that time were like small rodents, like mouse, rabbits,
shrews, things of that nature.
Ferrets.
The important part to this discovery is it kind of lets you piece together more of the ecosystem at this time period. a lot of what is now modern day western U.S., so the Colorados, the Utahs, where we have a lot of these dinosaur valleys actually. At this time period, a lot of it was a big inland sea.
Yeah, except for the more mountainous regions, it would have been basically like if you think of like the coast of Maine, like very rocky, mountainous kind of like the northeastern United States, and then it would lead down into this inland sea,
Right.
which pretty much the entire central part, what we consider like the Midwest, or if you look up like Tornado Alley, that central flatlands of the United States, like mostly the lower Mississippi basin, um, was all underwater. That whole from the Gulf of Mexico and like northern Mexico all the way up into Canada was pretty much
Yeah, so
underwater.
basically, if you're thinking between Appalachians and the Rockies was just a big ocean for the most part.
Yeah.
So these mammals that we're naming Heliocola picanus, which actually translates to swamp dwellers. So these lived in the marshlands, these swamplands, kind of the riparian zones
Mm-hmm.
between like your mountain and your hills and your coast and
Okay.
and the seas. Is what I'm understanding from this article. And what we're saying is like it's rare to find a mammal in the age of dinosaurs, and it's even rare to find something this big. Granted, we're making all of this off of basically a jawbone and a couple teeth, but it's distinct enough that we know it's its own species. We haven't seen anything quite this size in this area before.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, they don't say specifically if it is like a rodent, or something of that nature. They estimate that it may have been a cousin to the modern marsupials, so they would have been. It had molar teeth, is what it said in here, so they would have been at least omnivorous, if not a little more herbivorous. Yeah, yeah, it actually says here in the article, likely dined on plants with a few insects and other small animals mixed in. So, good chance it was relatively herbivorous, or omnivorous, like a lot of marsupials are now. But still, I mean, roughly 2 pounds or more, which, like I said, is larger.
yeah, large for the time period.
Yeah, not quite the biggest though. There's one known as the Didelphodon, which was up to 11 pounds, which, when you think about it and compared to now modern mammals, which are many tons, some of the largest at least, or at least your typical, you think of, if you
11
think of your,
pounds sounds like small dog sized.
yes, that'd be like a small dog. Yes, like my dog, be
Yeah.
roughly that size.
Yes.
But that's for the largest. Now this one is more like large, like it'd be bigger than a rabbit. Like I said,
Yeah.
like a muskrat, which not a lot of folks are familiar with a muskrat. Maybe like a maybe like a
Small badger. Yeah.
small, yeah, roughly, like not like not like the more
Probably like
like,
skunk size.
yeah, yeah,
Like any type of musculid,
or
really.
like raccoon.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
I think that sounds like a good size, an appropriate size comparison. Most folks, if they're familiar with like the raccoon, at least the American raccoon, um, be about that size, give or
Correct.
take.
But that's going to cover it for today's article. Once again, published yesterday, October 23rd, 2024. Granted, that's for us. For you, it's whenever. From University of Colorado at Boulder, uh, published in PLOS 1. Uh, which moves us into our normal lesson for the day. As we prefaced earlier, we're talking subphyla, infraphyla, agnatha,
Correct.
class cyclostomy, which is
Yeah, I believe cyclostomy may actually be a superclass. Is so
why
superclass cyclostomy,
why do we have to have these?
because they want to be specific. So our two classes specifically is Mixini, which are the hagfishes, and Hyperoartia, which are the lampreys. So these are two. These are, like we talked about, the hemichordates last week.
This is the next step up.
This is our next. So these are true vertebrates, but they are not vertebrates in the way that the rest of the vertebrates are classified, basically.
They're
This
not
would be
jawed vertebrates.
correct. These fall under the jawless fishes, is what
Yes.
they are classified as. So, like it says, they don't have jaws. They have mouths, but they do not have
There's
like a
difference
jaw.
between there's a large difference between having a jaw and a mouth. So
Correct.
most things have mouths. A mouth
Yes.
is the opening that inhales food, whether it intakes the
Consumes
food,
food.
consumes
Yes.
the food. A jaw is the actual part that opens and closes, whether it's a mandible or a
Mouth.
mouth like we have.
Yes. Yeah. So to get right into it, like we said, this is the jawless fish, uh, uh, consisting of the living two classes that we talked about, which are the cyclostomes, and there's a few extinct groups as well, which we will cover later on.
Sort
As
of.
yeah, so these are considered like the sister to all vertebrates with jaws. So your oldest fossils are seen in the Cambrian period, even all the way back into the Devonian, which is roughly 418 to 360 million years ago. So pretty good amount of time.
These are
Um,
some of the first vertebrates to evolve. Well,
correct.
as we're gonna cover a lot of these fish classes over the next few weeks, fish were the first things in terms of vertebrates to kind of show their ugly mugs around.
Yeah, yeah. A
Um,
lot of those original fish were not good looking.
no,
They were
so a lot of this will come from uh, a lot of these early ancestors will come from the Cambrian to right about the Silurian or the Permian is when we'll stop seeing a lot of these ancestors.
at that point they start becoming kind of your more modern
Yeah.
the modern varieties that you see now.
Yeah, things that kind of arise during that Mesozoic period because we're still before that we're still in like a Proterozoic period.
Rough, yeah, more or less, yeah. So, like we said, there's about 120 species in total of the living jawless fish. And these consist of, like, as we said, the lamprey, which fall into the order of Petromyzontiforms, and then the hagfish, which are your myxinoforms. So we said those two classes, they're kind of the orders and classes, they're basically the same. There's not really much differentiation until you get into your genus and species
Yeah, they
levels.
confuse me. Why can't we just have a ladder of?
I know they try to
It's
be
like, hey,
specific, and sometimes it gets a little tough.
it's so confused.
Um,
But these lampreys and hagfish are ectothermic, which means that they take their they need the heat from around them. They're not like us. We produce our own heat. They need their heat from around them. They don't have a distinct stomach. They do not have a distinct stomach. They have really just a long gut that kind of spans the entirety of their. And most of them, lampreys, they feed kind of like a suction onto their prey, and I'm sure we'll talk about it when we talk more
yes,
about lampreys. I'm sure we,
yeah. So this is a general overview
yeah,
of the two at this point. So,
but
like you said,
yeah, they consume the blood of their prey. A hagfish is more of a detritivore scavenger, crawls along the benthic zone and consumes dead things.
yeah. So like that whale fall, ocean fall, much larger organisms. You'll see large gatherings of hagfish, along with your other things like we said, the sea stars, those bottom dwellers.
They are characterized modern agnathans are categorized by a lack of paired fins. So in modern day Apteropterygidae, the bony fish,
Mm-hmm.
they have paired pectoral fins. These ones don't. They're kind
Yeah,
of just like
it's more similar to like if you think of like an eel, that's the same body style, kind
yeah,
of long, slender, that kind of vermiform sort of body plan. But the only real fin they have is the pector or is the not even a dorsal, it's just the tail fin. Really, it's just
right.
and it's more of just a extension of the skin tissue around the end of the body there. But they do, like as we said, they're vertebrates. They have that notochord.
And distinctly, they have the notochord in both larval and adult form. Some of the things we
Correct.
covered last week with the tunicates and the lancelets, they had it present in some forms, but not others, whether it be in an adult form or a larval form. These have it the whole time, in embryonic stage all the way through adulthood. And they also have gill pouches, oftentimes several pairs of gill pouches that span along the front of their body.
So they don't necessarily have like eyes the way that the higher vertebrates do. They do have more simple eyes. Lampreys possessing kind of a light sensitive pineal eye, more in the upper part of the head
And
region.
really all that does is kind of tell them top from bottom.
Correct. Yeah, they do have. As we'll learn later, they do actually have proper eyes because, as you said, lamprey they tend to be more free swimming, so they need to be able to kind of see what they're getting to. But your
Correct.
hagfish really don't have much in the way of an eye.
No, and we'll get into more of their sensory organs later. Um, as I said, the agnathans do not have that identifiable stomach or really any appendages. Like we said, they have that one tail fin. That's more of a rudder in terms of stabilization of their body. Um, they fertilize externally, so the female lays the eggs, and the male will release his sperm in a cloud around the eggs, and it's kind of like a spray and pray type method, to put it smoothly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and as well because of that they develop externally, like a lot of these simpler organisms. They kind of release the eggs and then they just free float until they hatch, and at which point they develop into basically like the larvae are self-sustaining, and there's no parental care at all. These larvae, as soon as they hatch, they're on their own and they function perfectly well on their own. As we said, they are ectothermic, so they're cold-blooded. That's something you'll hear us talk about a lot more as we continue with the vertebrates. They do have a cartilaginous skeleton. Now, it's not as developed the way
the sharks and rays.
like sharks and rays, which we will talk about in a couple weeks probably. But they do have a heart. But it's a two-chambered heart. So fairly simple, but they do have that heart with a kind of a proper circulatory system, although a good bit of the circulatory system is just dumps into that inner cavity. So it's
The
basically just
gut.
like So it's basically just like a blood-filled sac. I think at one point it said for some of them it's like up to a third of the liquid volume within the organism. So a pretty good amount of the blood is just contained within that cavity.
They have skin, more of a dermis than scales. A lot of the time, when you think of fish, they have like you think of like fish scales. They have that scaly exterior, kind of hard. Um, but no, these are majority like an epidermis type thing. The hagfish have these slime glands that come out of pores, or they're kind of porous. They excrete the slime that expands in water, and that's their self-defense mechanism. They're more sedentary, slow moving than the lampreys are, so they need that kind of mechanism that will help them out a little bit.
Correct. Yeah, and that slime has been because it expands so much, it's very sticky, and we'll get into it more here shortly once we talk specifically about the hagfish. But it gets into those fish that are trying to prey on them. It can get into the gills to the point where it like sticks and clogs it up, and actually can cause those predators to die. And then they may wind up becoming prey to the hagfish at that point because they become ocean fall. However, a good portion of the extinct agnathans that you see in the fossil record did have pretty extensive exoskeletons. So like either like a heavy dermal armor, as part of like that outer layer with the skin. It was like a very tough, probably keratinized like armor, or they had small scales. So they did have that outer coating, but the living ones do not. They just have a skin layer, and that's it. No outer protective hardened covering. And with that, that'll lead us now. We'll talk more specifically about the hagfish first. So I
Right.
will pull up a picture of one real quick while Tyler starts on our little guys.
So our hagfish, they're about, he says little, but they're almost 2 feet long. Well, that's a long, like, tube of ooze, is the best way to put it. 50 centimeters, 19.7 inches. However, the largest known species was a Eptotretus goliath, which was a record 127 centimeters, which is 4 feet long. However, there's the smallest species, mixing kuoi and mixing pequeñoi, seem to reach about 7 inches long, about 18 centimeters, and some are even smaller, about 2 inches long. They have these elongated like bodies, as you can kind of see in the picture there. They have paddle-like tails. Like I said, it acts more like a rudder, especially in these ones. They're slow moving. They don't really need speed. They don't need other fins to propel them. They just need it to steer. They have that loose-fitting, saggy skin. You can really see it in the hagfish. It kind of looks like you fill a sock with butter and threw it in the ocean.
Pretty much, yeah. Just like think of like a really stretched out sock, trying to keep that on your foot. That's kind of how it is. Just it's real loose. Typically, kind of like you said, that eel worm like body. Typically, like a grayish, dull, pinky color. Not really colorful. Say that their skulls are cartilaginous, so they are kind of that softer, hardened material. It's not bone, and the part around the brain though is more just like a fibery sheath, just kind of just a bundle of fibers that surrounds the brain to kind of protect it a little bit, but it's not as much of that.
Like a pseudo skull.
Yeah, but it's not the more hardened part. And they do have tooth-like structures. They don't have teeth per se, not true teeth, the way we do, but they have like a toothy structures that are just keratin, kind of hardened keratin,
Yeah,
that allows
so
them to feed on the
their
the detritus.
structures are made more of keratin, which is the stuff in your fingernails and your hair follicles and stuff like that. Whereas our teeth are what, dentine?
Yeah, it's like it's actual bone.
Yeah, compared to, yeah, a little bit harder than a fingernail.
Yeah,
Uh, like we kind of teased at earlier, they really have simple eye spots. They no lenses. They can't really see images per se, but they do
yeah.
have that pineal eye at the. That's a yep. There you
There you
go.
go.
I'm assuming those white spots are their pineal eyes.
I'm not sure. They may be a little closer to the front. You can see these little indentations here.
Yeah,
That may be a little bit more of what they were talking about as far as that's concerned.
and instead of having like a vertical jaw like we have and most other anathostomes, they have these horizontal structures that kind of move.
So,
That I thought the coral or whatever there was their teeth, and I was gonna freak.
yeah. Hold on. Let me
Yes,
reset my
please.
picture here. It's there we go. I apologize. I was trying to, it wouldn't let me zoom back out.
But
Let
kind of
me.
like these teeth-like protections. They're more like comb shaped. So like think of what's it called? What am I trying to think of here? The radula almost
Yeah.
from your gastropods we covered months ago at this point.
Yeah. So it'd be like these structures here for those that are watching. Um, on the screen here shows kind of a drawing of a cutaway of the hagfish, its mouth, the structures right above the point, kind of where my cursor is at, labeled D on the drawing here. That kind of comb-like structure there would be the teeth, quote unquote.
They don't chew like our teeth do. They're really more of like a gripper because that
Yeah,
the the teeth will extend up towards the roof of the mouth structure and kind of push it back down towards the pharynx and the rest of the gut.
Yeah. So it like we said, because they're not really chasing food, all the food they eat is dead. They really don't have to have something that can like grab and rip and chew. They just pull off small pieces and ingest it that way. And then going into the skin, as the image before showed, loosely attached to the body, pretty much just along that center ridge on the back, like where the notochord is at, but as well as where the slime glands protrude kind of out, or where they extend from the body. So it's, like as I said before, close to a third of the body's blood volume is contained just within the skin, kind of that blood-filled sac, as I call it, which most researchers believe is kind of an adaptation to survive predator attacks, because it makes them very soft and squishy, and makes them actually quite mobile. Because of that slime, they can exude a significant amount of that. Is a very milky, fibrous slime mucus. It's what is typically called. When they release it in seawater, it can expand up to about 10,000 times its original size in like half a second. So very big difference in a short amount of time, which allows them to escape from predators. And the slime is full of like real thin fibers, making it quite durable, but as well makes it very sticky. It stays around the hagfish as well as on anything that's trying to eat them. Makes them very slippery, easy to get away. And because it makes that slime kind of flexible, it allows them to, if they are caught by a predator, they can release that slime. And then as well, if something it does manage to grab them, they kind of tie themselves into a knot and squirm a whole lot to kind of be able to scrape the slime off of themselves and onto their captor and get away.
So most of their respiration takes place through their pharynx, and it brings it into the internal gill pouches. So in a lot of modern fish, your gills have these gill slits on the outside, and the gills are more internal. These ones, it kind of like sucks it through its mouth hole and pushes it back because they don't have actual gill slits, correct?
I believe so, yeah. Then this is a little different from the lampreys, as far as how their gills work, and we'll talk about them shortly.
And in terms of a skeleton, we kind of discussed it earlier. Uh, it has that fibrous skull, the notochord, which is like your vertebrate, and the caudal fin rays. So the caudal fins are towards the rear end, towards the tail.
Those are the tail fins. That's the term I was looking for before when I said the tail fin is that caudal fin.
Right. Um, and we describe it as the skeleton as a pseudo cartilage, where it's not like a true cartilaginous skeleton like in the sharks and rays, but it's more of a skeleton than not. And then Alex has pulled up another picture, more of a drawing of a hagfish than a live picture.
Yeah, it kind of shows that you can see on the picture there those fin rays that are coming off the end of the tail. Yeah. As far as the hagfish, as we said, the reproduction, very little is known because they do live in those deep sea environments. So it's hard to even obtain like embryonic hagfish. Primarily just adults is what are found, or young, like juveniles. In the wild, in a lot of cases, the females outnumber the males, which that ratio differs fairly significantly between the species. One species, for example, has pretty close to a 1-to-1 ratio, while there are some others that are the females are significantly more common than the males, which and then there are others that really don't uh, differentiate until they are fully mature, so they'll possess both ovaries and testes. And it's suggested that the females develop earlier than the males, which is probably why there's the unequal ratios, and it allows for more kind of a survival mechanic. More females survive than males because you need more females to lay more eggs. One male can fertilize a lot more eggs, but one female can only lay so many eggs. I forget, I saw the number earlier. It's a pretty decent amount of eggs that one female will lay, but I don't remember exactly. Let me try to
And I'm
find it.
sure it varies by species as well.
Correct, yeah.
But somewhere similar to the same clutch size per individual, with
Yeah,
some variation.
yeah. Some as little as one, but up to 30, like real tough yolky eggs. So not a ton. Like when we talk about some of the fish, they'll lay hundreds of eggs at a time. Um,
Yes.
so that having more females really helps improve the numbers as they are trying to reproduce.
Right. And that's gonna cover it for our hagfish for the day. We'll move.
Slimy.
Yeah, slimy, gooey, yucky, gross.
Yes.
But as we move on for a Halloween special, we'll move into something that in my mind is a little bit scarier. And that might be because I was the weird kid in elementary school that had all the animal books. And I very vividly remember one of my animal books having the the mouth part of a lamprey as a featured image,
Yes.
and it
So
just scarred me.
for all of the viewers, prepare yourself.
Yeah, it's not a fun picture. It's terrifying, and to think that these are kind of becoming some of the more common like pests in some locations, or
Yeah,
is
we'll we'll get there. Slow your roll. You're
yeah,
you're skipping ahead.
I'm skipping ahead. I'm stealing Alex's thunder.
Come
I'm
on.
I'm being a bad co-host. But let's get into it. Let's cover these lampreys. We have about 38 known living species, with about 7 extinct species. They are further separated into 3 families. 2 smaller families found down south in the southern hemisphere. Alex?
Geotriidae and Morticiidae are the two
Yes.
families.
And
Good
the
enough.
one bigger family in the northern hemisphere, the Petromyzontidae. See, that one's easy.
Yeah, a little
It,
easier, and that's kind of where the order gets its name from.
yes. They are some of the older fossils out of this whole group come out of that late Devonian period. So we said a lot of the hagfish were from the Cambrian, right? Is that what we
Yeah, a little earlier.
a little earlier? Well, Cambrian's the first thing.
Yeah,
Cambrian explosion. So we're talking early Cambrian, middle to early Cambrian, where these ones came around sort of right after during that Devonian period.
still about 360 million years ago. So
Still forever ago, yeah.
yeah, still a long time ago, but in geologic time, it's not as much.
Yeah, and the more modern ones, so this the body type that we're looking at, like that we see today in our waters,
Yeah.
really started coming around 160, really during the Jurassic period, and that's Alex has done a great job and pulled up a body image rather than just the terrifying mouth parts.
Yeah, yeah. Again, very kind of eel worm shaped. Little bit more to them. They do have, rather than just that caudal fin, they do have some dorsal fins near the tail in some of the species, which
As
we'll
well as
talk about.
eyes.
Yeah, as well. They actually do have proper eyes, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Um, as you said, a lot of most modern lampreys spend the good majority of their life as a kind of a juvenile stage where they burrow into sediment and filter feed. And they're the carnivorous lamprey that we talk about, those adults, they're the most well known of the species, especially because in a lot of cases, when fishermen catch larger fish, both in the ocean as well as in freshwater, they'll find these still attached to them. So that's why
Or
they're,
remnants.
or remnants of them. Yeah, if it's like just the mouth part or the sucker marks from where they had been attached. Um, so they feed by using those mouth parts. They kind of have, we said, that radula. They suck on and use kind of those uh, keratinized teeth to really latch on to the flesh of other fish and rarely marine mammals, but they do. They consume the flesh and then the blood. However, only 18 of those 38 species actually engage in that predatory lifestyle. The
It's about
rest,
half.
yeah, the rest are more they're more like herbivorous, scraping algae off of rocks and things like that. So typically, your coastal and freshwater in most temperate regions. There are some that will travel pretty good distance through open ocean. So not just in the coast, but primarily in those areas, which makes sense. That's where you see most of your sea life
Yeah, you're
occurring.
large, especially the larger species. Some of the adults, most of the adults resemble these eels, as you can see in the picture. That long vermicular, is that the word you used?
Yeah, vermiform.
Vermiform. They are scaleless, as similar to the hagfish. Uh, haven't quite developed that scale-like armor. The sea lamprey is the largest species. They're about 4 feet long, 1.2 meters. They don't like once again they don't have paired fins. They kind of just have that caudal fin as well as like a dorsal fin, which don't pair together per se, even though one's on top and one's more on the bottom ish. They have a single nostril on the top of their head, as well as several gill pores. So we're a step up from the hagfish, which just have internal gills and then kind of have to use their pharynx to intake water to get the oxygen out of from the gills. These have like a gill pore, not so much a slit like the bony fish have. So we're
Yeah.
seeing some common traits, like kind of like some links.
Yeah, and that makes sense because when they suction onto surfaces, they won't be able to use their mouth to breathe, so they have that nostril to kind of pass it through to the gills.
Kind of like how ticks breathe through their abdomen.
Correct, I believe. Kind of how a lot of like insects have the spiracles within the abdomen. Similar, but still different.
Right.
Similar idea.
Uh, Lampreys have 4 eyes, technically. They have your regular eyes, a single pair at the front.
Yeah,
Uh,
you can see
uh,
those pronounced eyes in the image. I will zoom in a little bit.
and you have the parietal eyes, the pineal and the peripineal eye, which are more of the light sensory organs. They don't really see the image, they just can detect up and down, really, based off of
Yeah.
the light. They have a buccal cavity, which is how they get their suction, kind of like what it, on the end that attaches to the animal. So on the mouth end, it is in charge of attaching, and then allows the tongue to make contact with the stone.
Yeah. So for the image I pulled up, I apologize for those who are a little squeamish. It is a kind of dissected lamprey. It's been cut dorsoventrally. You can see that buccal cavity here at the front, right below where it appears the eye connects in, kind of that opening here, which is where they are able to create that suction.
Right. And in the herbivorous stages slash species, they use that buccal cavity to attach to rocks, and they'll use their radula
Yeah.
to kind of scrape the algae off the rocks. They have that cartilaginous skeleton similar to the hagfish, which suggests that they kind of are like that sister species. That's our basis for that determination, is the cartilaginous skeleton that is similar enough to modern day sharks and rays and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's something to. They like you said, they just have that notochord, but they do kind of have some cartilaginous structures that are right above the notochord, sort of like how vertebrae in the a true bony in the true spine would run around the spinal column. Kind of the just the very beginning look at that structure as we get into the higher vertebrates that actually have a skeleton. So you can see how these, as I said, these are kind of the most basal group of the vertebrates. This is where you see the hagfish are a little more simple. These are a little bit more complex, and then as we continue up, they become even more
Yeah,
complex.
this is the part of the show where it gets interesting, because each week we're going to tack on new adaptions and new things that kind of differentiate. So you're going to see on a week to week basis more of more differences and how we get from this to from one group to the next, rather than, oh well, we're gonna cover this super group in 3 weeks like we did in the invertebrates. It's going to be really exciting, and I hope you guys stick around. That's going to conclude today's lesson, and as always, we have our three returning segments. Uh, Alex, how do you want to do this? What do you want to do first? Do you want me to go, or you want to go?
Go for it. We'll start with our amazing species first. They're a little more interesting.
They're cool.
They're cool.
Today we're going to talk about the broad-gilled hagfish. You know, we're staying in theme. Yes, Alex has done a great job. Pulled up my picture for me already. Similar in all forms to everything we've talked about. That eel-like, worm-like shape, that sack of blood, whatever you want to call it. They are a least concern according to the IUCN, which means we don't have to worry about them right now. They might become a problem later on. We haven't really seen too much population decline. They are found in the southern hemisphere, really around like Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, the tropical islands down there, Micronesia,
That's Southern
Polynesia.
Pacific.
Yeah, they are oftentimes that pinkish gray, but have like a piebald variation. And for those who don't know different color types and variations, piebald is what a mix.
It's kind of
Like a spotty type.
Yeah, so the image that I pulled up, you can kind of see it a little bit where it has that white, what we would consider almost like a discoloration. That is what that piebald look is like. If you want to see a really distinct look at what like piebald, look at the cervids, like the deer and
Yeah,
moose.
a
They
lot
they
of
display it when they have that coloration. It's very obviously displayed. You'll see it's not like albinism because that's pure white, like a total lack of pigment. It's just a different coloration. Well, they'll have like that dark coloration with the light coloration mixed in different ways.
So the distinction between these broad-gilled hagfish compared to other species of hagfish in the area, they have 6 barbels around their mouth. So the barbels are kind of that sensory organ. Since they don't have great eyesight, they use these barbels like catfish to kind of detect whatever prey might be on the ground. They are, as we mentioned, they are scavengers. They feed on that dead or dying invertebrate fish, and sometimes that ocean fall of a dead whale, maybe. Once again, they produce that thick slime through those slime pores, and that causes predators to kind of clog up their mouths, gills, or other structures.
Is this a situation where some people it actually is in a lot of areas like a delicacy? People eat hagfish, especially like Asian cultures. It's very popular. Is this something where they are keeping an eye on this species of hagfish because of that? They're kind of being over harvested a little bit.
Yes and no. Like, yes, they're being overharvested, but not. And it looks like they are, but the species itself is able to keep up enough that it's not such a detriment to the
Okay.
population.
I'm sure a lot of that has to do with it since they are benthic organisms, and you have to have a pretty tight net
Yes.
to catch them because if it's big enough that they can squeeze their head through, it can pretty much squeeze
Right.
all of them through.
And
That slime really helps.
yes, these are some of the more studied in terms of population size for these hagfish species. A lot of hagfish are data deficient just because they are a benthic species, and it's really hard for us to get any type of equipment down 1,000 meters under the sea to where some of these species live. But that is going to cover today's amazing species. It was kind of short since it's least concerned. There's not much of a conservation background for me to go into like I normally do. So we'll move it on over into Alex's most wanted, and he kind of stayed on theme too by the looks of it.
Yes, sir. So my most wanted for this week is the sea lamprey. So what makes this a little different than what makes it invasive is specifically in the Great Lakes region of the United States. These are initially marine lamprey, so they lived in the ocean. Um, they're native to the northern and western Atlantic Ocean. However, they had been transplanted into the Great Lakes primarily by the what is called the Welland Canal. Connects Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. It kind of forms a key section of the St. Lawrence Seaway, so it does eventually connect, I believe, into the ocean some. But the problem with this is because most of the fish within the Great Lakes, the largest fish are your sturgeon, which can get fairly large, but most of your fish are 2 feet ish or less, so they're not huge. The biggest thing that was impacted in the lake Great Lakes is what's called the lake trout, which is a species of trout native to like the Great Lakes as well as a lot of those lake areas. They do get fairly large, but because of the lamprey, the article I found here, they were first introduced in the 1830s, and pretty much within a decade, they made their way to all 5 of the Great Lakes and very quickly started predating on all those commercially important fish like the trout, whitefish, perch, sturgeon, and it actually caused the trout fishery to collapse within a century. So by the early 1900s, there was not much left as far as the lake trout are concerned, which when it's something they're very important commercially, that causes a lot of concern. A lot of people in that area would eat those.
Especially, this
Yeah,
article says that one lamprey can kill about 40 pounds of fish.
yeah. Which for fish that size, that's a good probably couple dozen fish at least.
And that's
Get,
just one.
yeah, and that's just one lamprey. And as we said, they really don't have any predators because most of the fish that are within the Great Lakes, even though they're predatory, they feed on smaller fish, um, insects, things like that. They don't really have teeth. Most of the toothy ones, like you think, like pike and muskie, for some of these larger lampreys, it's going to be very difficult for them to actually get capture them and eat them. There are techniques that they have implemented to help prevent the lamprey from becoming worse. They were able to set up barriers and traps to prevent upstream movement. Uh, so for those waterways that feed into the Great Lakes, to keep them out of there, and they were able to apply chemicals called lampricides, which specifically target the larva of the lamprey, but they're harmless to other aquatic creatures. So they're able to control the lamprey larvae, kind of knock the numbers down while also preventing the spread of the lamprey. And some newer techniques they have been developing to use like pheromones to replicate those pheromones that the lamprey use to kind of prevent, I should say, more make the current control methods more effective. So kind of use those pheromones to get a bunch of lamprey to congregate and either catch them and remove them, use that lampricide to kill a lot of the larvae as they gather. So something that they're working to prevent, but it's something the fishery still struggled to come back um, since then, which said it was about a decimated a 10 million pound per year trout fishery. So think about how much fish before the lamprey were introduced they were able to catch. That's a lot of fish, and then it just suddenly crashed. So this is where they become why they're such an invasive species, why they're such a problem. They really don't have any predators in the Great Lakes because they're not predatory fish the way there are in the ocean. You have a lot more toothy fish, and it's just.
What feeds on these in the ocean? Do you know off the top of your
I
head?
mean, it would have to be, like I said, some of those toothy fish. I don't know exactly. My guess would be like maybe small sharks,
Yeah, because this
like
is.
small, like predatory fish, maybe barracuda,
I guess,
small
yeah.
sharks, maybe rays. I don't know. I do not know for sure off the top of my head, if I'm being honest.
We'll let you know.
Yeah.
Follow. We'll get there. Never mind. Do you have anything else, Alex? By the way, this article was published by the National Ocean Service.
Yes.
For those that wanted to follow along, look it up for themselves. NOAA, National Ocean Service. Anything else, Alex?
For these guys, I do not.
Okay, let's stop sharing our notes. That will bring us on to our final segment for the day, our From the Vault. And as always, we cover something from the past that we try to throw into the lesson. So we're actually 3 for 3 today on terms of keeping everything in the lesson.
Yes, sir.
We're going to talk about one of the extinct groups of agnathans. The Austriacans, I believe is the term. They're a group of extinct agnathans, so jawless fish. They were more of that armored grouping that Alex kind of alluded to earlier. There's really 2 main groups of armored agnathans, Austriacans and the Pteriaspids. The Austriacans had this more like of a shovel head, where they had more of a wide cranial shield, and the Pteriaspids had more of a elongated swordfish like snout like protrusion. These lived around the Silurian and Devonian period, mostly in the northern hemisphere, modern day America, Europe, and Russia. They were some of the more advanced agnathans. They had those paired fins you can kind of see in some of these renditions. Some have like the little dorsal fins off the side, but they're more like flippers because these were more flat in terms of dimension. Together, these were believed to be like that kind of middle ground between modern day agnathans and modern day bony fish, since they had that paired vertebrate as well as not vertebrate, paired fins, as well as these sclerotic ossicles, which is like the bony protrusions that they have along their notochord, and they had a layered dermal skeleton. What makes these different is they have, like I said, they have that larger cephalothoracic shield that sits on top of their face. And as you go on through time, that shield gets smaller and smaller and reduces into more of just like a face covering rather than this big shield. The larger species was Pyramidea or aspis with a 40 centimeter face shield, which is kind of big in terms of compared to the rest of the fish. They were believed to be the strong swimmers of the time because of those dorsal pectoral fins, as well as a strong tail. A lot of the fish from the time period don't have this. They have that more rudder-like tail, like today's lamprey and hagfish. No paired fins. They kind of just pushed. And since this was one single piece in that that head shield, it was believed that it didn't grow as they reached adulthood. So it stopped growing. That's probably how they died most of the time, was they just outgrew the shell. But we were able to find some imprints in some of our fossils we found today that show some more complex sensory organs, which were used for probably for like vibrations, similar to like the electroreceptors in like modern day sharks and things like that.
Okay.
But that was a little quick overview on the osteostraci, or the Austriacans, and we will wrap up for today. As coming to that time, we've covered our agnathans, our cyclostomi, our modern day groupings.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so our kind of our creepy, slimy, gross-looking vertebrates. I mean, depending on who you ask, some of them still a lot of people could still say that some of them get real creepy and slimy, and
yeah, pretty much.
But for now,
yeah, for now. But we'll close as we always close. If you could, like us on Facebook at Life the Complete Story. Follow us on Instagram at Life. Is it Life Complete Story?
I believe so.
Life Complete Story. Send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com. What am I missing here? Oh, follow us on Spotify at Life the Complete Story. Rate us. Leave a comment. subscribe to the YouTube page at Life the Complete Story. We have social media. I know we've been slacking in social media. One of our friends is going to be helping us. He's great. I talked to him. We have this all squared away. We have a game plan. So
fantastic.
Look forward to it. We're going to be a lot more active there. And I think that's covered it.
I believe so. I think that kind of does us for this week. So next week we're going to be looking into our cartilaginous fishes.
Probably, yes.
I think that might be our next group. So pretty popular one at that. So look forward to that next week. If that's not what we're doing, I apologize now, but I think that may be where we go next.
Yes, that is where we're going.
Fantastic.
As always, keep learning.
Learn something
new. And we will see you next week.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us.